Hey there, handy friends. Today I've got something really exciting. I found some wild oyster mushrooms, so I'm gonna show you how to identify and harvest those. We're gonna harvest the oyster mushrooms, head back to the homestead and harvest some burdock root. But burdock root, you can find that wild too. I found it wild. It's just easier to harvest on my own land. Let me show you how we make this burdock miso soup. I'm still an amateur at mushroom hunting, but these are oysters. Completely edible. Found on this tree in the woods, shining through the sunlight. Look, more on this side that I didn't even see. I may have just found what's called a honey hole. I did find a honey hole because this is the tree right next to that one. And look, oyster mushrooms all over. It's pretty amazing. Sportastic. Please remember not to ever eat any mushroom if you are not absolutely sure what it is. Oyster mushrooms have decurrent gills, which means the gills are attached and run directly down the stem. Not all have a stem though, and there is no ring or sac around the base. Flesh of the stem is white, and the cap of oyster mushrooms are fan-shaped, usually 2 to 10 inches across. You can see how they grow in a shelf-like cluster. They are smooth with no scales or warts, usually white to light brown. These mushrooms feed on dead wood, often found on beech, aspen, and evergreen trees. They give off a light anise and or black licorice smell, and they're usually found in summer or fall, and sometimes winter. I bought oyster mushrooms through our CSA for years. I spent a fortune. Both of these reasons help me to identify oyster mushrooms. They are also very easy to identify when compared to other funguses. Oyster mushrooms taste something like cashews and are a wonderful addition for my soup. It's September here in West Michigan, so the mushrooms are in season. It's also root harvesting season. We will get into that soon. Now there are some species that can be yellow, brown, tan, and even pink of oyster mushrooms. These mushrooms are one of a few carnivorous mushroom species in existence. They will kill small roundworms and bacteria and digest them. I bring these mushrooms home, cut out some of the stem where the bark may be still attached, rinse the bugs out under the faucet, and store in a wax-coated box. Burdock is also fairly easy to identify. Its root is harvested primarily during the fall, after its first year, before it shoots up with its flowers on its second year. After burdock's first year, the plant bottles up all of its nutrients and energy for hibernation until spring, when the stalk will emerge. Burdock leaf is a huge heart-shaped leaf, dull in green color, with tiny hairs. Burdock looks very similar to rhubarb, but the stems of burdock leaves are grooved, while rhubarb is glossy and smooth. There are other lookalikes as well, so be sure you are safely foraging. We are digging around the edges of the root, being sure not to damage the root as we do so. So make sure you give yourself enough space. We are also chopping the leaves off to get them out of our way so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. The hardest part is to get the bottom of the root out of the ground. After we get the root out of the ground, we're going to spray it off with our hose, pull some of the tap roots off of the side, and take it in and clean it up a little bit better. Once I get the root inside, I usually scrub it down with my vegetable brush and slice it up in about 1-inch slices for this soup. Burdock root is used in many different ways. You can also dehydrate your root and save it for tea later. It's easiest to harvest the root when the ground is wet. Root harvesting is no quick task. Burdock roots very deeply into the ground. The root has a chewy, crunchy consistency with a very mild, sweet, earthy taste, most similar to artichoke. Burdock root has a carrot-like shape with a rough, thin skin. Under the skin is a dense, crisp, and crunchy flesh. It's commonly used in other countries as a food staple. Its medicinal properties are out of this world. Here's a look at some of the ingredients that I'm going to be adding in my soup. As you can see, I have my burdock root and my foraged oyster mushrooms. I used chickpea miso, which is fermented chickpea beans, for my soup. You can use any kind of miso, or you don't need to use miso. The burdock root was delicious. It was soft and it has a wonderful taste. It takes on whatever flavor your soup is, and the mushrooms added a very nice cashew nutty flavor to my soup. I also added some kale that I didn't picture here out of my garden. This is a very flexible recipe for a very hearty, antioxidant rich soup. Feel free to give the screen a pause if you're interested in the recipe and jot it down yourself. I will also put a copy of the recipe in the description. And I am curious to know if you've tried burdock root and in what ways are your favorite, since it is such a medicinal plant. So be sure to comment below. I hope that you enjoyed this video and enjoy the soup if you make some on your own. Please subscribe to my channel, as I would really love to connect with you in the future and to have an all-natural plant-based channel. Give me the thumbs up if you really did like this video, and stay handy, friends.